We all know the future of Trump's presidency rides on the midterm elections. So I dug through thousands of polls to chart out each and every possible scenario for how the balance of power in Washington, D.C. will be after the midterm elections. And we're going to go through them from the least likely to the most likely. Scenario number one, and I'm going to tell you why each scenario could, in fact, possibly happen. And remember, the numbers, they speak for themselves. So don't blame the messenger. And we're going to start off with the least likely scenario, scenario number 4, and that is less than a 1% chance that Republicans hold on to the U.S. House of Representatives, but Democrats actually win the United States Senate. How could this possibly happen? Well, if you have been following politics over the last year or so, you know, of course, there was the big redistricting that happened across the political map. It was happening everywhere from the great state of Texas all the way out to the leftmost coast of California, the great state of California, with all those electoral votes. And you can see here the national vote margin, Dems need to win the House control. Well, under the current lines, right, the lines that are happening right now, they only would have to have won the national House popular vote by less than a point. By less than a point. So basically any win would have gotten them the House. But now with redistricting, look at this. The Democrats, in order to win back the House of Representatives, they have to win by anywhere from 3 all the way up to 4 percentage points. So Democrats can't just win by a little, they got to win by a lot to win back the House. On the other hand, what are we seeing in terms of the Senate that could make this scenario possibly happen, even if it isn't too likely? Well, it's all about Donald Trump, baby. It's all about Donald Trump. Look at Trump's net approval rating across these Senate battleground states. And these are states, Democrats have to win at least a few of them for control. Look at them. They're red. They're red across the political map. A state like Texas that Donald Trump won by double digits. He's way down underwater in the Rio Grande Valley at -9 points. Ohio, another state he won by double digits, 10 points underwater. Iowa, the great field of dreams. Well, it's a field of nightmares right now for Donald Trump. He's 10 points underwater. North Carolina, the Tar Heel state, 14 points underwater. In Maine, where, of course, Susan Collins is running, and Democrats have, let's say, had some issues, but even there, look at that. Donald Trump is 21 points underwater. So if these elections, these Senate races are determined by Trump and redistricting really turns out to be a big deal, well, you could, in fact, see a Republican House and a Democratic Senate, even if not too likely. But more likely, how about scenario number 3? What are we talking about here? Well, this comes in at 15%, not too high, but certainly much higher than less than 1%. And that is a GOP sweep. I wish I had a broom. I'd sweep it across. But hold on, I'm going to tell. Yeah, Nick, next time around, get me a broom, okay? Okay, sounds good. Okay, so a GOP sweep at 15%. How could that happen? How could that happen? Well, take a look at the median seat needed to win control. These were the 2024 presidential results. Based upon redistricting, Trump won the median House seat by 5 points. My goodness gracious, that means that Democrats have to win at least one seat that Trump won by 5 points. What about in the United States Senate? It's even more difficult for Democrats. They have to win at least one seat that Donald Trump won, get this, by 13 points. Woof! That is very, very difficult indeed. So if the map looks anything like it did in 2024, well, Democrats definitely have their work cut out for them in the Senate and in the House as well. Now, beyond that, well, let's just talk about the Democratic brand. You know, Donald Trump's political brand ain't too hot to trot these days. But I got to tell you, PU, when it comes to the Democratic brand, the net favorability rating of the Democratic Party. You know, back in 2018, when Democrats, during the first Trump presidency, right, when they were able to win back control of the House, they were even. They were even, right? Favorable minus unfavorable, even at 0-0-0. Now look at this, 25 points underwater. Oof, oof. You know, the Dem brand, as I said, it's not too good these days. It's not too good. It kind of smells like a New York sidewalk in the summer. Beyond that, how about this? How about the fact that voters at this point say that the Democratic Party is too far to the left? The left. I'm going my left. I guess that's stage left, right? Take a look. Voters saying the Democratic Party is too liberal. In 1996, it was 42%. 2013, 48%. By an earlier poll this year from the Washington Post, up like a rocket, 57% of voters nationwide said that the Democratic Party was, in fact, too liberal. So the Democratic brand, if this election turns on the Democratic brand, well, then Republicans still have a real shot, it's a low shot, but it's a real shot of maintaining power in Washington, in both the House and the United States Senate. Now, this has exhausted me a little bit, so quick little drink, little cream soda for me. It's good. Okay, what about scenario number 2? Okay, now we're starting to get somewhere. Hello, okay. 2026 midterm outcome chances. How about a Democratic House and a Republican-held Senate? That comes in pretty high on our list. 33% chance of that's happening. Why is it? Why is it that this, in fact, could happen and it's high up on the list? Well, let's just talk about history, okay? Let's talk about history. Time Pres Party loses in midterm elections in the last 100 years. Democrats need a gain of at least 3 House seats. Well, the president's party has lost a net gain of 3 House seats 88% of the time. That's pretty gosh darn high. What about they lose 4+ Senate seats, which is what Democrats, in fact, need in their net gain in the Senate to regain control? That's only happened 56% of the time. So just based upon history, we would, in fact, expect that Democrats have a much better chance of doing what they need to do in the House of Representatives than what they need to do in the United States Senate. And in fact, there are other structural factors that make that likely as well. Well, you know, I mentioned redistricting, right? I mentioned redistricting and the fact that Democrats have a higher bar that they have to get past. But if we're talking about the National House vote, they have to win it by 3 to 4 points. Guess what their current poll lead is? It's way north of that. It's way north of that. We're talking about a 7-point lead at this point. So Democrats are doing what they need to do in the U.S. House at this point, despite the structural disadvantage that redistricting, in fact, is giving them and is aiding Republicans. But beyond that, take a look here. Okay, we're talking about the Senate map, right? The Senate map, as I mentioned, tilts heavily to the right, And you can see it here. The median in the 6 key Senate races, we're talking Alaska, Maine, Iowa, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas. There's a median in these six races. Look at this. A generic Senate, Republican, that is, who do you want to control the United States Senate? In those median seats, the median seat, Republicans still have a lead of 6 points. It's still a very large lead. And Republicans, if they hold on to the median seat, they will hold on to the United States Senate. And get this, you know, I mentioned earlier on the problems with that Democratic brand. Look at this. 53% of the voters in the median of these key 6 races say that the Democratic Party is too liberal. I'm going to get a note in a second from my buddy Nick. I'm very much looking forward to it. But you'll have to stay tuned to find out what it is. Now, beyond that, there's a state I haven't mentioned. Here, and that is the great state of Michigan, where Abdul Assayed has, in fact, won and become the Democratic nominee. Take a look at the polling, though. This is a fresh poll that we literally just got. Okay, I wasn't even sure what it would be, and this is what the poll is. My buddy Gordon, my producer Gordon over there, put this poll in literally as we were doing this presentation. Michigan Senate roll freshly out from Fox News as we're doing this presentation. Look at this. Mike Rogers, the Republican, at 51%. Abdul Assayed is at 47%. So in a state that has not had a Republican United States Senator since, get this, 1994 was the last time that a Republican won a Senate race in the great state of Michigan. Well, guess what? Mike Rogers, in a very high-quality poll from Fox News, one of the best pollsters are out there, leads Abdul Assayed by 4 points. So you can just see how it's very possible with that large Democratic lead on the House ballot in the Senate races, they're not polling in this particular race too hot to trot, and we also know they have to overcome the structural disadvantages of those being some very red states. That being said, leading equals good. Thank you, Nick. I was so uncertain, but Nick has got it for me. It turns out leading equals good. Thank you so much for that very kind note, Nick. My producer's really helping me out on this one. Let's turn to all the scenarios. We've gone through the Republican House, the Dem Senate, less than 1%. GOP sweep, 15%. Democratic House, Republican Senate, 33%. Well, that only leaves one scenario with a 52% chance of happening, and that is despite the poor polling for Abdul El-Sayed in a state that normally goes Democratic on the Senate level. Can I get a drum roll, please, Nick? Thank you. There it is. Scenario number 1 is a Democratic sweep at 52% chance. I was surprised by this before we started cracking the numbers, but that is why we do it. It's the numbers. Don't blame me. The numbers are the numbers. Now, why is this? Why is this the most likely scenario, though it is still about a 50-50 between this and the other ones? Well, why don't we just take a look at some Senate polls beyond what we're seeing, right? 2022 Senate, 2026 Senate margins, beyond what we're seeing in Michigan. Well, North Carolina, you're seeing a 9-point Democratic lead. Maine, a 3-point Democratic lead. Ohio, a 3-point Democratic lead. The average in Texas is a 2-point. James Talarico slightly ahead of Ken Paxton. And in Iowa, even in Iowa, which hasn't elected a Democratic senator since, what, 2008, and Tom Harkin? Woof. I believe he's the last Democratic senator elected in Iowa. He's literally the last one since I was born, because Chuck Grassley has been the senator there since, what, like 81? So you put this all together and look at the Senate map. What does that give you? What does that give you? Okay, Dems would, in fact, win the Senate with this map if, in fact, they were able to flip Ohio, if they were able to flip North Carolina, if they were able to flip Texas, if they were able to flip Iowa. If they hold on to their seats, that gets you, you can see it on your screen right here. Look at this. 52 Dems, and 48 Republicans. That's what it would get you. And what's so important here is, as we were literally breaking it down, right, we said, hey, maybe we got to go up to Michigan and that becomes red, right? Maybe that becomes red. And what would that still leave you? Well, that would still leave you Democrats with 51 Senate seats. So given the polling in the other states, even if Michigan went red, Democrats would still be able to hold on to the United States Senate or win control of the United States Senate, even if Abdul El-Sayed goes under Lake Michigan with his electoral prospects. Now, of course, what's overriding all of this, right? We talk about the individual races, but what is overriding all of this, I think Nick might be writing another note. I'm not sure if he is. If he is, Nick, you'll let it go when it comes. It's just this. What put Donald Trump in the White House? What put him in the White House? What put him in the White House was that they thought he could help, voters thought he could help them with their cost of living. But look at this. The impact of Republican policies on your cost of living. Just 24% of Americans say help. Look at this hurt number. It's 55% on the issue that got Donald Trump a second term in the White House, a second presidency. Folks, you got to be picking up your phone if you're a Republican in Congress and calling Donald Trump up and saying, help me, please, Rhonda, help me, please, because you can't win. It's very tough to win with this type of environment on the number one issue being inflation, and 51% of the American public think that your party has in fact hurt your cost of living. That is very, very bad news. And you know what also allows the Democrats to, I don't know, be sitting pretty, looking cool, sitting pretty? Well, just look through history. Just look through history, because this says it all. All right, Donald Trump at this point has a net approval rating under 20 percentage points, right? His approval rating somewhere in the 30s, his disapproval is in the high 50s, low 60s, depending on what poll you look at. And at this point in midterm cycle, I went back through the history books, because you know what? Learning is cool, my friends. Learning is cool. And there were only two other presidents who had a sub-20 net approval besides Trump at this point in midterm cycle. Richard Nixon in 1974, he was literally forced to resign just a few days before now, back in 1974. Wasn't alive then. I heard it was a groovy time. And then George W. Bush in 2006 also had a net approval rating under 20 points at this point. Did either one of those two folks, did their party hold on or win control of the House or the Senate in the great Congress that is of the United States of America? Did they win either chamber? No. No, they did not. Bush's party lost both of them. Nixon's party, in fact, did not hold on or win control either of them. And that, my friend, in fact, very much leads Donald Trump at this point, as you can see, and his Republican Party looking at a Democratic possibility of winning both the United States and the United States House and the Senate. Numbers talk. I've been told to flip it. This is I really like. And is there a second thing here? Oh, yeah. Here it is. And I just listen. And you know what else I listen to? I listen to your comments. So leave one after this video if you like what you saw or you have suggestions for the next one. Peace out.